Welcome to the Dawn and Steve Plus podcast, fueled by Raphael's Roastery and supported by you. Connect to us on socials or dawnandsteveplus.com.
Well, Jake Weidmann is a professional artist, and he is certified as one of only 9 Master Penmen in the world, and the youngest to do so by a long shot. Jake, thank you for being here. And I got to start with, what is a Master Penman?
Well, thank you for having me, Steve. Absolutely. Master Penmen always bears some level of explanation. Not many people have heard of it. It doesn't exactly top like most kids dream of what they want to be when they grow up, you know.
Yeah, when I took that test, that was not an option that popped up.
No,
yeah.
Surprisingly not. You know, maybe next year it'll make that list. Who knows?
Right.
So back during the golden age of penmanship, and yes, there was such a thing as the golden age of penmanship, which was essentially from the end of the Civil War up until about the 1930s. Becoming a penman, becoming a career penman was a great career option for people. And so there were art colleges and business colleges where you could go and earn your degree as a penman. And then you would go on and work for some business or organization, essentially keeping their logbooks or doing certificate work. There were a whole myriad of different ways that you were employed essentially as a professional handwriter. And but during that time, the ones who essentially went above and beyond and elevated the discipline of penmanship to a true art form, they were regarded as master penmen. And so there were such amazing characters through history that were a part of this. You know, there was F.B. Courtney, and he was actually, his nickname was the Pen Wizard. Because he could do things with the pen that looked like magic. He could write, and in mid-writing, he would change hands because he was ambidextrous and finish the word with the other hand. Or he could write a word upside down and backwards, and it was absolutely perfect. Or he would teach students in a classroom, and he'd fill a chalkboard with museum-worthy calligraphy and flourishing. And then at the end, he would sign his name in opposite directions with both hands at the same time. Wow. Or there was Louis Mataraz. He was called the King of Penmen. And he devised so many different beautiful styles of script, one of which was the serif script, which is what the Coca-Cola logo is. So you can credit one of the master penmen back in history for coming up with the script for the Coca-Cola logo. So as much as they are kind of, they've disappeared into the background of our history, they still are ever present in our day.
That's incredible. And to watch your videos, not just the penmanship, which is mesmerizing in and of itself, but we're going to get into even more of your artwork. But with 8 other master penmans in the world, do you guys talk? Like, is there a master penman?
A secret handshake or something?
Is there something that brings you all together?
Yeah. We come around a big round table and lay our pens down. No, it's there is such a thing as a penman's conference that happens annually, and it's not just the masters that meet. Thankfully, you know, the art form has seen actually a major resurgence in our day and age, especially from when I first attended my my first conference. I think I was 21, almost 22 at the time. And I showed up, and there was like a little less than 100 people meeting in this hotel room, and they were all passionate calligraphers and penmen. And so I walked in, and it was a lot of older people, and they said, "Young man, are you lost?" And I was like, "No, I'm here for the Penmen's Conference. I want to learn calligraphy." And they just welcomed me with open arms, and they've become like a true family. But that the association has grown leaps and bounds. The discipline of calligraphy has just had this beautiful renaissance in our modern age. So thankfully, there's a lot of people who are coming to it and finding this renewed passion of writing by hand.
That's good. And, you know, think every kid should learn to do that. I look at some of my kids' handwriting, and I'm like, man, I wish you guys would learn to write by hand. I got to do it. Send them to some of your classes. But Jake, how did you get into this to the point where you realize, like, man, this is my passion. This is what I want to do for a living. This is my career. This is the way I want to serve the Lord.
It was something, and I write about this in my book. It was something that was, that took me a long time to get to, but was ever present as well. It was just, I always loved drawing as a kid. And my parents knew that they could always find me, stole away somewhere, either painting or drawing away in my room, or I used to love doing my handwriting. I practiced my handwriting obsessively, so that by the time I got to college, it looked absolutely ridiculous and ornate. And I was always the last one in class to finish my notes because I was just taking my time to flourish my letters and make the page beautiful. In fact, there were several of my professors that wanted to keep my essay tests at the end because they were so pretty. So,
That's so good.
But at the same time, it was like, so while art was this, this childhood passion that just stayed with me and grew into adulthood, it was just something I never dreamed I'd be able to do as a living. And so I kept kind of putting it off to the side or figuring ways to keep my passion alive, but as an accessory to the main thing, which always, which changed as I grew up, but there it was ever present, and my constant friend through so many different periods of life. But it wasn't until college, and I was going, I was at Biola University, and I was getting my degree in psychology, and I was still doing my art on the side. And there was one day in cognitive psychology class, and this girl who sat next to me in class, she leaned over to me and she said, "Hey, I'm getting married, and I've been shopping out wedding calligraphers to design our invitations." And she goes, "I've gone through a whole litany of different wedding calligraphers, and none have as beautiful handwriting as your class notes, which I've been staring at, all semester long." She's like, "Would you design my wedding invitations?" And I was like, "Whoa! I mean, that's a big ask. I'm just using a dip pen here. I haven't learned any traditional method, but let me do some research, and I'll get back to you." And so I did a deep dive and started scouring the internet, and I found one video of a Master Penman, John DeColobus, who he's now like a dear friend of mine. And he's the greatest ornamental penman alive. And so I saw him writing with a dip pen and white ink on black paper, which made the experience all the more romantic and magical. And I saw his pen move in this like beautiful fluid way, and seeing the line have this gorgeous variation of this super fine whisper of a hairline that grew into this big dramatic bold shade, and then back to this hairline stroke, all while he was writing. And it was like watching ballet on paper. And from that moment, I was like tearing up, looking at my computer screen, just thinking like, this is it. This is the thing that I was always chasing after, but didn't know at that time that anything like that existed. And so through him, I found this association that's been keeping the art form alive. And again, I was pursuing it on the side of my psychology degree. But after graduating, the only thing that I was able to really make a solid living at, funny enough, was various art commissions. And so it was just, it was like God always just kind of nudging me along as many wrong turns, or maybe it was just a winding path and not so many wrong turns. But, God used my whole journey to just eventually lead me back into this calling that was there since childhood.
And the book you're referring to is kind of what brought us together today, and that's Old Soul, New Creation, and it features a lot of your different artwork, and you use so many different mediums, which is what is fascinating. Like as you're talking about the calligraphy and the writing and the creation of the letters, because I've seen some of your videos, I can see it in my mind's eye, but I'm also thinking about, yes, but you picked up a paintbrush and you have picked up a pencil and you
Right.
use so many different mediums in your creations, the gold gilding. I mean, I it's hard to even ask questions because it's so amazing to watch what God is doing through you and through folks that
Mm,
have that kind of artistic ability. It's just almost like worship, watching you worship him
absolutely.
because he is the creator. And when you
Absolutely.
come to I don't know that it's necessarily canvas, but the paper, and you're getting ready to start a project, where is the inspiration coming from? Like I've seen you do C.S. Lewis, which we thought was a photograph, and it because of the way that you created his likeness is just amazing. But where do these inspirations come from?
Oh gosh. A lot of it is obviously being that old soul is I'm always looking to, the classical artists of the past. Um, so that really describes the technique, but the there was always like a deeper intent to the artwork that was created. That art was never in their mind, to the old classic, true artists, it was never art for art's sake. And as C.S. Lewis, quoted, "Art for art's sake really rips the greatest power from art." Because art's greatest power is to always point to something higher than itself. And so for me, there's always like the things that are inspiring to me are the messages that art can carry. And so that really draws me into the creation process, because I'm thinking about what is the message that I want to deliver to the world. Here, art is this beautiful universal language that through the years, unfortunately, has been turned to gibberish. But in my own way, I want to restore that. I want to bring art back to its original intent as a form of worship. And so that means bringing true truth, beauty, and goodness into my art before the viewer, that draws them into a relationship, a deeper relationship and deeper appreciation of God and the image of God that they bear.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And, when you look at the work that you have done and the pieces you have created, you're like, okay, home run, dude. Like you're crushing it. But
Thank you.
when you have already been able to produce what you have and have received, some of the awards and titles and things that you have at this point, how do you continue to see God nurturing your talent, refining your talent? Do you have any idea, what you think he might be doing in the days ahead?
Uh, Gosh, that's a really good
Yes, but then he'd
question.
have to shoot you.
Yeah.
It's a secret.
um, there's I feel like it's always further up and further in with God. That there's always opportunities that he's leading me to in deeper relationship in my walk with him, and also where he's calling me in my vocation. And so and that really kind of outlined the book. Like when I started writing this book, I was talking, I wanted to like really capture the meaning and everything in the book. But what really came about is like God has been consistently doing this throughout my story. So as much as I am creating new art pieces, he is making a new creation of me all the while. And so in some sense, it's like I have my own vision for where I want to go artistically. But as to where he is taking me spiritually, it's like I leave that up to the ultimate artist. But I know it's ever in the refining of my soul, more and more in the likeness of the image of his son.
Ever any hard days? Ever any times where you wonder, Lord, how how will you bring about the next chapter? Because this is so difficult.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean uh, more to count, and longer than this program has to fill. I think, but that's, you know, um, it's something I choose to do. It's something that I choose to struggle. I choose to enter
Mm.
in, because it's like I know that's where the Lord meets me. There are so many times where it's like, I'm in the middle of a project now that it is the largest piece I've ever done. It's definitely my magnum opus up to this point, and it's a massive 5-foot carving of a family crest that
Wow.
involves like the carving of some 20 different pieces of wood that will all be carved individually and then assembled thereafter into this high relief carving. And so, you know, there is there's been this like repeated pattern in my life where I have to step into the River Jordan before God parts the waters. I have to get not just my feet wet, but sometimes I'm bobbing off the bottom, lifting my chin above the surface of the water before He actually parts it. But um, that's where I meet God, that's where He shows up in the most amazing and intimate ways, where I can decidedly say, like, that was beyond me. That goes far beyond my skill and what I know how to do. And, it's like there the Lord steps in and supports me. And so, so there's unbelievable stories of God doing that in my life. And then, even providing a living for our family through it, which, again, was something that was almost like it was, if not a lifelong doubt, a half lifetime doubt that I would ever come to this as a professional artist.
You know, a lot of us, Jake, I think we want to see God do that parting of the water, but we also want to take the easy way out. We don't want to bob. We don't want to,
Absolutely.
feel the water touch our chin, right?
Right.
We want the easy way out. And as I think about where do I see that, or at least this is my perception as someone who is nowhere in your world, but where I suspect I see that is the world of AI and the world of digital and the way that
Sure.
computers and everything is changing our landscape. And so when you think about art and creating and what God has shown you and revealed about Himself and taught you about yourself through all of this, and then we see AI just coming into this space in such an invasive way.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? I'm just kind of curious, like where's your mind with all of that right now?
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely a current hot topic. And I think you're right to call it invasive, because I think, we've definitely seen art is one of those things that we've always seen as it is exclusively human. G.K. Chesterton in Everlasting Man, he takes to task the anthropologists of his day who painted our earliest ancestor, the caveman, as a simple brute. And he says there's no evidence that remains of their brutishness, but what does remain are paintings on cave walls. So the only thing that can be concluded of earliest man is that he was an artist. Dig far enough down in the earth, and there you will find that man has drawn a picture of a reindeer. But no matter how deep you dig, you will never find that a reindeer has drawn a picture of a man, for art is the signature of man. And so, art being this signature of man, all of this sudden, for a computer to start seemingly creating art feels invasive. It feels invasive on our God-given ability to create, not in just an industrious way like the beaver or the termite, but in this truly creative way that recognizes beauty, that sees the world around it and feels compelled to re-express it in our own way. And that is something that is uniquely human. And so honestly, when I look at AI art, and hopefully this is an encouragement, especially to younger listeners, that if you stare that tiger in the face, you'll find that it has no teeth, because in the end, AI is just, it's a simulation of the creation process, but it is not actually creating. It is just generating something from pre-existing creations. And there's a lot of like actual legal cases that are underway right now, because it is proven that it may not, we may not have created a computer that can create art in an instant, but we have created a computer system that has stolen art in mass. And there's even been trace elements of paintings and photographs that you can go back to its original source that are sort of hodgepodge together in this digital way to seemingly create something new. But all the while, when you look at it, it falls short. So even the legal aspect aside, it doesn't feel true. It doesn't feel genuine. Someone once said, we've always wondered what art would look like if it was created by a soulless being. Well, now we know, we have AI art. And so, but it should beg the question of, what do we value in art in the end? And I think, pointing back to J.R.R. Tolkien, the thing that we love about a narrative is that it points to the existence of a narrator. And so in the same way, it's like we love this idea of an art piece, that it came from a creator. And that's what gives it its value. And so in many ways, I think it's, I'll be interested to see how it plays out. Even though it's the new kid on the block, it still has to follow the old rules, which have been long established. It was John Ruskin, who was a Victorian art critic, and he said it best. He said, "That which is created quickly will fade quickly, but that which takes a great deal of time is sure to last through the ages." And so, you can have your instant coffee, but, you might all it might leave you with is just a bad taste in your mouth. But if you have something that takes a long time to create, that is what has the lasting power. And so I think that, as much, and that I take that as an encouragement to myself, like, even though I spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours on an art piece, I know that is a key ingredient to its lasting power through the ages.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well said. Well said. And to encourage all of us, however God has wired us, called us, and asking us to give it back as worship to him, the talents that he's put into us and even into our souls, which is what you're going to see if you will connect through the show notes and things for Jake Weidmann's, especially the new book. You have Old Soul, New Creation, but watch the videos.
Yeah.
Those are just amazing. Jake, thank you for your time today.
Absolutely.
We are grateful, and thank you for just giving it unto him, and we get to be on the sidelines watching.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us for the Dawn and Steve Plus podcast. We're a listener-supported, non-profit podcast, and we're grateful for your generous support. You can give at dawnandsteveplus.com. Our producer is yours truly, Stephen Briggs, with assistance from Chris Westmoreland. Please like and subscribe to Dawn and Steve Plus anywhere you get your podcasts and on all our socials. Links to what we talk about and to Raphael's Roastery are in the show notes below. Thanks for joining us and being our plus one.